All right, fellas, time to dial in the last piece of our foundational porn-free operating system, your habits and your routines. And for this lesson, you'll need to have gone through the Frontline framework lessons on the STAQ method and the Frontline routine, because both of these two things work together, particularly for our goal of getting clean. What we'll be covering here is what I believe to be the optimal habit stack for quitting porn and how to ensure that you're consistently evolving until porn is no longer a part of your life. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So here is my recommended porn-free habit stack. All right, we've got our baseline. These are the things that we're going to be trying to do every single day, and it's going to be easy so that even if we're dealing with a day of high triggers and cravings or life challenges, we can still pull it off. And the first piece is the porn-free lock-in with those two entries that we talked about previously. It's going to be an emotional trigger counter and a chemical trigger counter. And we'll describe what these are in a minute. And then on the standard part of the stack, I want you to be focusing on quarterly goal advancement. So this is the general framework. Now we're going to walk through each piece individually. So we'll start by looking at this porn-free lock-in here. And this is going to include the daily plan, the stack where you track and update, and then meta-scripting. All right, it's kind of like your basic lock-in process that we've talked about. But the one tweak here is that in the meta-script part, you want to make sure that you're doing the one general life entry, and then you're also doing that porn-specific entry, that one that's designed to help you mitigate cravings, learn from relapses or slips, or process any present cravings. And so this gives us that nice balance between making sure that we're moving forward with our life with the daily plan. The stack's going to be what keeps us accountable, and then these two entries here are what's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So making some space that for this 5 to 10 minute routine here, and making this something you're doing every single day, it's something that's so powerful, and it's really not that hard. So we're going to make this part of our baseline. So altogether, this porn-free lock-in, that's one piece of our core porn-free stack. Okay. Now we got two other pieces to this. The next one is an emotional trigger counter. And what should go here is going to be different person to person. But basically, we want something easy to do that is specifically designed to counter emotional triggers. So for example, okay, like if you notice that work stress because you're not working enough is one of your things, well, maybe you got to put a focused work amount here. Maybe it's like an hour or 2 hours or half an hour, something very minimal that that even on hard days, if I do this amount of work, it's going to reduce some of that work stress, which is a major emotional trigger for you. Or maybe if loneliness is a big trigger, then it's going to be connecting with people. It could be, making sure that you actually come out of your office or whatever and spend time with your family, or it could be texting friends or going to some kind of more social space. Okay. If, it's just kind of like an energy thing, you just get cooped up in front of the screen all day, well, then maybe daily walking is going to be one of the things for you. Or, if it's just a matter of not having enough fun or pleasure in your life, then maybe you got to make sure you actually get, disciplined with having genuine downtime where you're enjoying yourself. But the high level idea here is that on this emotional trigger counter, you think about what are my big emotional triggers, and then what's something easy I could do every single day that'll help bring down the intensity of those triggers. So now let's move on to the final piece of our baseline, which is a chemical trigger counter. And this is something that's going to be easy to do to counter chemical triggers. Pretty straightforward. And it's similar to the last one, but we're thinking more about the chemical side of things rather than the emotional. Like, for example, all right, this might be an electronic shutdown period where if you notice that, all right, if I'm up on my phone late at night, there's a good chance that my scrolling will just kind of go haywire and I'll end up on some porn. Well, then making sure that you shut down electronic usage, or at least your phone usage, before you get to that point, that'll do a lot to prevent those kinds of slips. Some guys, they just need, when they come home from work, they need to keep their phone plugged in. They don't want it in their pocket. That helps mitigate mindless scrolling. Some guys maybe need to swear off certain kinds of media that they know will have a triggering effect on them. Maybe it's certain apps, right? Like some guys, they just can't use Instagram. Like the Instagram Explore page for a lot of guys is a death trap. So it's like, all right, add that to your stack of avoiding that. For some guys, it's just when they get tired, they get triggered. So maybe it's about keeping a certain kind of sleep schedule. I wouldn't do a big dramatic sleep thing, but just, what's the minimum you would need to do to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a massively deprived state that makes triggers more likely. Or maybe it's just something as simple as always having an audiobook to read where you can just pop it on, or maybe it's a digital book where if you're whipping out your phone, instead of scrolling, you're reading the book, like easy access to pleasure, something along these lines. But thinking about what's just a simple thing that I can do to reduce the amount of cravings that I'm going to be dealing with that counters my personal patterns. I've got another important piece of advice for guys when they're thinking about how to set up their stack specifically for quitting porn, and that is to not eliminate other big sources of pleasure unless you've got a realistic plan on how to replace them. So what this is about is that I've seen that when guys try to quit porn, they're also trying to quit a lot of other stuff. They feel like, all right, well, I'm going to cut out the porn. I'm going to cut out all scrolling, all video games, all YouTube, all whatever, okay? All Netflix, and that's generally not a good idea, because when you just take all of that away and you don't fill it properly, well, then you're going to feel very deprived. It's going to be this kind of white knuckling situation where you haven't actually built up the alternatives in your life well enough to the point where it's just too much psychological stress and pressure. So generally speaking, don't make other big, massive removals of pleasure sources for you. You can always do that later. Like, for example, when I quit porn, I played a ton of video games, okay? Was it a healthy amount of video games? No, probably not. But what I did is I traded up. It's like, all right, fine. During this period, I'm going to let myself play some extra video games. And I was able to quit porn, and then I dialed in the video games and stuff later. So just don't be too aggressive with this. And if you find you really do want to cut out something else, it can be done, but you got to have a good, clear, and fulfilling replacement for it. All right. So unless you've got that, it's all right if you still keep some of that other stuff in there for now and just handle it later. So that handles the baseline part of our porn-free stack. But what about the standards? All right. Well, really, this is going to be about quarterly goal advancement. And this could be anything, really. It's like you want to look at your quarterly goals and figure out some standard habit that'll help you advance toward it. So for example, maybe it's more focused work time. Maybe your baseline is 2 hours. Your standard amount is 4 hours of focused work. Maybe it's a fitness habit. Maybe it's a prayer routine. Maybe it's learning. Really whatever is on your quarterly goals, try and figure out something that you could aim for on a good day that will help you move toward that goal. And the value in this is that this is where we create that lifestyle momentum. This is where we do that 80% work of creating a life that you don't want to escape from in the first place. I just want to remind you that this should be something that you could generally hit. If you're not hitting your standard like 60 to 70% of the time, then it's probably too intense and you might want to moderate it a little bit. But that doesn't mean you have to have 3 things. Like maybe you just have 2 things or even just 1 thing in your standard habits. That's totally fine. Generally speaking, more focus is better. So that's the plan for the habit stack. But, we might not get this perfect all at once. It might take a few rounds of iteration to make sure that we really dial in what's going to work for you. And that is where the weekly command center comes in. This is like our control point for the whole process. So when you do your weekly command center, you're just going to follow the general 5-step formula that I've laid out in the previous lesson on it. But you're going to, record your wins, particularly in relation to your streak. Take the time to celebrate any growth in your process that you can. All right. Like if you've, gone a streak of days, feel good about it. Yeah, maybe you haven't hit 90 yet, but those days are still essential. If you had a slip, but you did a good retroactive entry and you learned from it, record that. All right. And also record other big life wins. This is how we're getting our dopamine out of porn and into real advancement. And the only way we're going to do that is if we allow ourselves to get the little dopamine hit of celebrating those wins. But when it comes to the other parts of the command center, what we're really going to be asking ourselves is like, am I creating a life I don't want to escape from, right? Like, how did my last week go? Is there something that I need to change? Like, what do I need to have for this next week to continue to try and make my life better, to move forward, right? Am I reasonably reducing my points of craving? These two questions here, that's kind of what you're going into the weekly command center with. This is what you're trying to make sure that your command center does. It's this point where you pull back from just like getting stuff done day to day, and you're thinking like, all right, how's my process look like? How's my overall strategy? Am I feeling like I'm moving forward, or am I getting stuck? Do I need to iterate? Do I need to shift something here? Without this step back period of reflection, it's very easy to just get caught in a rut where you're trying to do the same thing over and over again, but really all you're doing is smashing your head against a wall, trying the same old things that don't work. So when you do your command center properly, what ends up happening is that you become anti-fragile. This is a Nassim Taleb concept which I love, and it's the idea that, you got fragile things that break under pressure. You've got robust things that can resist pressure and, contact, but, they'll eventually break. Anti-fragile things are things that become stronger under pressure. Okay. And that's what the command center really allows you to do. It allows you to become stronger because it always offers this opportunity to evolve, grow, iterate, and continue to move forward. If you stick to this approach, many of you will be able to smoothly quit porn outright. But the problem that a lot of guys run into at this point is that they struggle to stick to habits. They struggle to stick to routines. So if you're at this point, you're looking at the process we've set up and it makes sense to you, like you see how it can work, but you doubt your ability to actually follow through, then what I want you to do is join the Command Center community. I built this community to make unleashing your apex potential, and which includes quitting porn, simple, social, and fun. So many guys are just way too isolated in this process, and that's a serious problem. There's a great quote out there that says that the opposite of addiction is connection, and there's real power to that idea. And I'm not just talking about like connecting to your friends or loved ones. I mean, that's great, but what I'm talking about is a special kind of connection, like the kind of in the trenches camaraderie between men who are working towards the same goals. You see, we are fundamentally, biologically social creatures. Like a huge portion of our brain is dedicated to social interaction. And the psychological power that you have available to yourself when you are alone is far less than what you have when you are connected to other people. Like, for instance, it's easy to fool yourself and sabotage your own success when you're the only one there. But when you're plugged into a group that's like on the same page, they're dealing with the same things, they're following the same process, evolution happens so much more naturally and smoothly. So if you want to make quitting porn and creating a life that you don't want to escape from, like 10 times easier, 10 times more fun, then check out the Command Center community by clicking the link below and seeing everything that we offer to help you unleash your apex potential. So that being said, you now have an incredibly effective system installed for removing porn from your life. And you just gotta use it, right? And really the only thing that can block you at this point is your inner game. And that is what we're gonna be getting into next. So I'll see you there. Ooh, yeah.